Every great city has its tales, and I've been documenting their stories and people for over 20 years. This is Tales of a City. Good evening and welcome to another episode of Tales of a City. We are all capable of making bad choices in life, but for some of us, those choices are so bad that they land you in prison. Now the question is, once you've been to prison, is it possible to be rehabilitated, and is it possible to be a contributing member of society? Life in an outlaw motorcycle club is a life of crime, drugs and violence. And more often than not, it only ever ends one way.
Search warrant! Open the door!
No movement.
Keep going. Go. Police search warrant! Police search warrant on the ground! Police search warrant! Police search warrant!
But is there redemption after living a life like this? I spoke to a group of men who are all convicted criminals, hoping to make a difference. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for spending time with me this afternoon. I appreciate your time. Now, the pair of you have spent quite a bit of time behind bars in your lifetime. How much would you estimate you've spent of your life in prison?
I've already done 2.5 years. Most of the time it's been in outlaw motorcycle clubs.
I see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same.
And same for you?
Yeah.
You're now saying that to the world that you are, not only have you turned your life around, but you want to help other criminals escape the mill of going back to prison. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. Yeah, with that as well, like to stop kids from going down the path to begin with.
Early intervention?
Yeah.
Indeed. It's pretty easy for a kid to find themselves in the penal system, isn't it?
These days, especially with the glorification of crime through the media and like movies and television and stuff, it seems to be a growing problem.
Making crime look cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Now, in your cases, was there a turning point for you where you decided, look, I just want to take a different direction in life?
Because over time, what I joined wasn't there anymore, and it was just seemed to be more and more about money. And then I was just looking at my boy one day, and I just thought, I don't want him growing up like this.
Yeah.
So time to pull the head in. And
Yeah, I imagine that there was a time that you would consider being in a bike club, being more of a brotherhood. And it was about, and you had a real code.
that's what we joined.
And you felt that it had changed?
Yeah. There's no brotherhood anymore. It's all about money and looking cool on Facebook.
Really looking cool on Facebook.
Yeah.
Same for you?
I left the club a while before Matt did, but still didn't live a proper life. I was still not earning my money legitimately, should we say.
Yeah.
But then sort of the death of my grandpa and then a few years later my nana, that sort of made me start thinking, what am I doing and how to live my life to make them proud, which I haven't been doing up until that point,
It's funny how life sobers you up at some point.
Yeah.
Indeed. We all have to grow up sometime.
Yeah.
Do you think for a person that has spent time in prison, it's pretty easy to go back in once you've been in? Is that right?
Yeah. Once you've been there, the fear of it, the fear of the unknown's gone. So going back's the easy part. There's no deterrent there anymore.
Recidivism.
Yeah.
Indeed. Do you think that, is there such a thing as redemption, as turning it around?
Of course there is.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do now. I think we're proof that you can turn it around and turn a negative into a positive. And that's what we're starting to do, and we plan to continue doing.
And how do you plan to go about doing that?
sort of by helping people in any way possible.
Have you formed an organisation to do this?
Yeah, we formed Ward Brothers.
The Ward Brothers.
Yeah, building better lives.
Building Better Lives, that's a great name.
Yeah, so just at the grassroots of it now, starting from the very bottom, and
Yeah.
got the help of Steve Kane from Empathy Not Sympathy. He's going to be mentoring us.
And Henry Keogh.
And Henry Keogh, and then we're just going to start from scratch.
Well, it's very admirable. To your detractors who would say, oh, what a load of bullshit, we don't believe them, what would you have to say to them?
Watch this space. We can't expect everyone to believe that we've turned around and changed our life for good, because hey, we've done a lot of bad in our life, and there's going to be a lot of people out there, a lot of doubters that don't believe we're for real and don't think we can do it. But what we can say to them is watch this space, keep an eye on us and watch what we're doing, and sooner or later you'll have to believe that we are for real for what we're doing.
Well, I would think there's an old saying, it takes a thief to catch a thief. Perhaps it takes a crim to reform a crim.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, I think we got a better chance of that than people that learn about the lifestyle from reading a book.
Yeah, I find it interesting that within like corrections, the social workers and psychologists, etc., tend to speak with great authority on people's lives, yet they've never actually spent a day behind bars and don't really understand what it's.
Don't know nothing about.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't get feelings or thoughts or anything from reading a book. But if you've been there, you've lived the life, you know how people are feeling, you know what they're thinking. So therefore, you're in a better position to help them and understand them. You can't understand someone through reading the words on paper.
Henry Keogh was convicted of murder in 1995 and was sentenced to 26 years in prison. In 2014, his conviction was overturned after 21 years served, and the decision is controversial to this day. Henry has teamed up with the Ward brothers to use their experience to guide others. So, Henry Keogh, thank you very much for spending some time with me.
You're welcome.
You're quite a controversial figure in South Australia. You famously spent almost 21 years in prison.
Yep.
And for a murder conviction, and then it was overturned.
Yep.
How long have you been out now?
6 years.
6 years. I'd have to ask you the same question that I asked Matt and Tyson. I would have thought that spending time in prison would have made you somewhat bitter, but you're an advocate for prisoner rehabilitation and actually facilitating with the Ward brothers to bring about this organisation that can help others. How is this possible? I mean, you had a long time in there.
A lot of people do remark on the fact that I am not embittered, but they say, well, how's that possible? The thing is, they're assuming that I was like that all the way through, and that's not the case. For the first 5 years, I actually naively believed that the legal system would correct itself, do what it's supposed to do, get to the truth, and not be a fight between two sides, come what may.
As we were always led to believe growing up that right always wins, you were still believing in that?
Yeah, and the tooth fairy.
Yeah.
But after the High Court appeal went south, I realised then that my chances were sunk, and that it was never a legal fight. It was always a political one, and we just didn't have the firepower to wage a war against that. And so I had to come to terms with the very real probability, not possibility, but probability. I was going to die in prison, and that took some readjustment. And then I became angry and bitter, and bitter, and I was not nice to be around. I pushed people away, I shut them down, and that was whether it was guys in the prison or even the screws themselves, and family. And it just broke my heart when I would see what I was doing to them. And I thought, ugh. And so I said to them, look, I need some time away, some time alone. Stop visiting, I'm not going to make phone calls. But of course that just played all the more heavily on them, because in a vacuum, your mind works overtime.
Yeah.
And all they had to go on was what they've seen in the movies and read in books. And that's not very
Accurate.
or positive.
So that was your growth was your turning point whilst you were still in there.
It's hard to say. It was incremental, but I think once I had come to terms with the fact that I probably was going to die in prison, because even if the parole board had recommended me, there was no way known I was going to turn around and say, oh, look, I'm guilty, you've got me, or anything like that. No way. And because of that, they're probably unlikely to recommend me. And even if they had, the then government, no way. No way.
So your conviction was overturned, and here it is 6 years later, and you've become involved with the Ward brothers. How did that come about?
I'd like to say bad luck, but he probably hit me. Well, Tyson and I actually bumped each other in Yatala, and I don't know, I wouldn't call it love at first sight, but it was sort of a mutual respect. And we'd known of each other and heard about it, and we'd both sort of been carted off for a strip search and just sort of nodded on the way through.
Fun, mate.
Yeah, exactly. It's just part and parcel of
Right,
prison.
so you met in prison.
Yep.
And now with Building Better Lives,
Yep.
you're helping them to facilitate getting this organised.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of my skills or whatever contributions that I can make boils down to seeing a bigger picture sometimes, or thinking of ways in which you can bring party A together with party B, or come up with some sort of marketing or advertising strategy or something like that. And if I don't know how to do it, I may know someone who does know how to do it. And they're both useful keys.
To your detractors, because there'll be many people out there that'll be watching this,
I hope so.
and there'll be many of them saying, I don't believe a word of it, the leopard doesn't change his spots. What would you say to those people?
Well, I haven't changed my spots. And look, everyone is entitled to an opinion, and often those opinions are based in hearsay or rumour or bias. And I don't have the time, the energy or the interest in trying to change people's opinions, because you can't. Because they're usually immune to logical reason. So why waste your time?
Well, Henry Keay, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you the very best in your endeavours with the Ward brothers.
Thank you.
Stephen Kane was a Melbourne criminal with a long history of offending. 20 years later, he spends his time as a public speaker and advocate for prisoner rehabilitation.
So Steve, thank you very much for spending time with me as well.
Absolute pleasure of mine to be here, and thanks so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Now, you're what we can commonly refer to as an old Melbourne crim.
You can, yeah, most definitely.
And reformed.
Very reformed now, very blessed, yes, over 20 years reformed, yes.
How do you come out from an experience like that? And I would have thought that you would be quite bitter, and then to turn around to try and help others, that's a vast jump. What happened?
It was a big journey actually. It was, look, this hasn't come easy.
Yeah.
And, even today, as a lot of people that have been through a lot of time in prison and that, PTSD is a really big issue in my life, and depression and stuff like that. But look, really, my life started when I was 12. I was made a ward of the state of Victoria, put in a boys' home, put in handcuffs, put in a police van, taken to a youth training centre called Toronto Youth Training Centre. Taken in there, stripped down naked, told I no longer had an identity, I now was a number. And I belonged to the Victorian government until I was 21.
Bluestone College.
The College of Knowledge.
Yes, indeed.
The College of Knowledge, people talk about where did you go to school, and I say Pentridge Prison.
Yeah.
And they say, what are you talking about? I said, well, look, it was known as a College of Knowledge, because you might go there as a burglar, but you're going to come out of there as a very knowledgeable armed robber or a car thief. So, so that's why it's had its name. But it led me to Pentridge, and then that cost me another 15 years of my life.
What was your turning point?
I had been transferred from Pentridge to what they call the Melbourne Remand Centre, which was in Spencer Street. I'll never forget my first experience, because when I first went into Pentridge and you walked into your prison cell, you walked in and you had a steel frame bed, a mattress, one pillowcase, 2 white sheets, 2 grey blankets, and a bucket in the corner with a bit of wood on top and a toilet roll. There was no TV, nothing like that. There was no running water, anything like that. And we were locked up from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 7 o'clock the next morning. And then thrown out in the yards like animals. And then they transferred me to Melbourne Remand Centre, where they gave me a TV.
Flash.
A shower in my room.
Wow.
A toilet with a seat on it.
Luxury.
A kettle to make coffee and a view of Spencer Street. And I'm sitting there going,
This is prison?
this is what's happened, and
Not like Pentridge.
No, and I'll be honest, I didn't come out of my cell for about 9 days, and it wasn't until one of the senior prison officers came up and he said, "Listen, Kane, you got to come out, mate. What's going on?" I said, "I'm not giving anyone up." I said, "I'm not playing your game, mate." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, look, man, you treat me like a dog and throw me in Pentridge for, years of my life and the disgusting players, and then you put me in here. What do you want?
Yeah, you were suspicious.
You must want something." Look, I know I hurt people. I know I did what I had to do. Most of what I did when I hurt people was to survive inside Pentridge Prison, not outside in the community.
Yeah.
And for me, I know it's not right to hurt people now, but that's the way it had to be. But it now has changed. Our prisons have changed now. Look, it's great to have this comfort stuff. It's great that they've got this stuff and they're not being treated like animals. Hallelujah for that, brother.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, where's our rehabilitation? Why aren't we having programs? I have spent the last 9 years trying to get into our prisons in South Australia, and they won't let me in. And I'm fed up with it. Why aren't we letting us get in there to stop this incarceration? And especially the intergenerational incarceration. If I can do it in my family, I can do it in someone else's.
Now you've gone to great lengths to try and assist others, and you have an organisational motto. What is it?
Yeah. I came up with what I call empathy, not sympathy.
Yeah.
Look, I now am very blessed where I get to. I haven't been able to get into our system to help our men and women in our prisons, but I'm never going to give up the fight to do it.
What was the turning point for you?
My turning point, and as I say this, please, I say is not a pretty story. Look, it got to the stage where it was 1992, and I was in the Melbourne Remand Centre, and I was about 35, and I was tired. I was
Worn
tired.
down.
Yeah, I was that tired. I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't know how to stop going to prison. I didn't know how to stop taking drugs. I didn't know how to think differently, to live differently. I just didn't know how to do it, and there was no one to teach me. That's why I do what I do today. I remember I got up this day in my cell, and I was in Unit 5, and I had, as I said, I had a beautiful view of Spencer Street. And I knew when I woke up that morning that was going to be my last day on this earth. That, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm tired of hurting people. I'm tired of all of it.
You wanted to end it?
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't angry. I wasn't crying. I wasn't anything. I just knew that when I woke up that day, that was going to be my last day here. So my day went through like normal, like any other day, and it was no dramas. And look, no one would have picked anything. And I remember the door shutting that night, and I knew that was my time. So I'd already made the pre-arranged decision of how I was going to do this, and I wanted to be respectful. I hadn't been respectful a lot in my life, and I thought if I was going to be respectful, I could at least do it in my death anyway. So I remember I got two white garbage bags, and I got the garbage bin. It was a black garbage bin, a brown one, and I put the bags in, and broke open my razor, and I laid down on my bed, and you can still see the scars today. and cut my wrist up here and up here, and lay down and put my arms in the bin so I wouldn't make a mess.
Right.
There I sort of looked down at the bucket, and I could see the blood was rising, and I looked at the bell, and I thought, you're not worth it, mate. You're just not worth it, mate. So I just laid there, and I was quite happy with that decision. And I sit back today, and please, as I talk about this, I say, please, this is not the way anyone should go. This is not the way. This, you know, if I'm one of the lucky ones to still be sitting here today, where sadly a lot of people aren't, and we lose a lot of men and women this way. And you know, I do ask the people to please, always ask for help. So I remember laying there, and I started to lose consciousness, and I don't know what happened. Well, next thing I could vaguely see my door open, and the print of two people in grey and green. I remember grey and green overalls. I come to learn later that they were ambulance people. What had happened is that the prison officer had been doing his rounds, and funnily enough, he got to outside my cell, and he said to me when I got back from the hospital, he said, mate, I couldn't move. He said, something's telling me to open the door. He said, I know I'm not allowed to. He said, but something's telling me to open the door. He says, like my feet were stuck in concrete. And they rushed me off to the hospital, and I believe at some stage I was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital.
Wow.
I so remember even today the white light. Mm-hmm. I remember this. People, I don't know. It's not a room. It's just this light, and you just get to this light, and it's like someone lifts 10 cars off your shoulders, bro. And it's so peaceful, and it's so beautiful, and you don't want to leave. Mm. But then I felt on my shoulder, and I opened my eyes, and there's no one in the room. I'm looking around, and there's no one there. I still today struggle with that. You know, I grew up in a religious family and stuff, and I still today think to myself, who tapped me on the shoulder, man?
Yeah.
But that was the last time I was in prison.
Yeah.
And then I came to South Australia about 25 years ago, and happy days. Here we are. The drugs stopped, the alcohol stopped, and now we spend every day that I can trying to make a difference and let people know it's okay. It's okay. You'll be okay. Never give up. You can do this. If I can do this, I'm 20 years in jail. I've got 7 pages of criminal history. I'm a drug addict, an alcoholic, a liar, and a criminal. And if I can change, you can change. So never ever give up. And that's my message to people.
Good on you.
Yeah.
Well, clearly these men have set very high goals for themselves, and it will be a test of character for the challenges ahead. But what they have demonstrated clearly is that we are all masters of our own destiny, and it's up to us to choose which path we go down. We'll be back next week with more Tales of a City. Until then, be safe and be good to each other.